Well, hello, and thank you for joining our webinar today. We're going to give folks just another moment to log in, and then we'll be starting soon. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to the 2022-2023 Better Buildings webinar series. We are dedicated to bringing you the latest actionable insights from leading industry experts, partners, and others. This annual series is a chance to explore the topics, technologies, and trends that will affect your organization, as well as efforts to accelerate decarbonization and energy efficiency adoption. Next slide, please. So today's webinar is called Measuring Up, Leveraging the Capabilities of the MEASUR tool suite. Before we dive in, I'll just go over a couple housekeeping points. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be archived on the Better Buildings Solutions Center. We will follow up when today's recording and slides are made available. Also, attendees are in listen-only mode, so your microphones are muted. If you experience any audio or visual issues during the webinar, please send a message in the Q&A box located at the bottom of the Zoom panel. Next slide, please. My name is Bruce Long, and I'm your moderator. I'm also known as Robert Long, so don't feel bad if you call me Robert or Bruce. I respond to both. I've been supporting the Department of Energy's advanced manufacturing offices for about 22 years now, and I'm really happy to bring you this webinar on some important software platforms that are contained in the MEASUR tool suite. Next slide, please. So today we're going to go over basically an introduction. We're going to have a MEASUR overview from the lead developer at the Oak Ridge National Lab, and then we're going to go into some partner kind of testimonials about the experiences with the MEASUR tools and the value that they've gotten from them, and then we'll launch into some Q&A sessions at the end. Next slide, please. So today we will be using an interactive platform for Q&A and polling called Slido. If you can please go to slido.com on your mobile device or by opening a new window in your internet browser. Today's event code is #DOE, and DOE is all caps. If you would like to ask our panelists questions, please submit them anytime throughout the presentation in the Slido box. We will be answering your questions near the end of the webinar in the order they're received and by the amount of thumbs up they get. You can select the thumbs up icon for questions that you like, and this will result in more popular questions moving to the top of the queue, and those will be the ones we'll likely focus on. So we want to learn more about you before we get started. So we're going to start with a few polls. If you could please join us at Slido to respond to the following questions. Then if you're having any issues, please message our tech support team by using the Zoom Q&A function. So, have you ever used MEASUR? We'll go ahead and give folks a few more seconds here. It looks like we may have some new users today. Okay, great. The next poll is, what sections of MEASUR have you used? For those of you who have used it. Oh, pumping is jumping out to a lead here. Compressed air and steam is also pretty popular. Calculators, all right. We'll give folks a few more seconds. Keep on responding. Okay. Well, it looks as though calculators and compressed air are kind of the lead platforms are most popular here. So great. Great. Well, thank you all very much. That's very helpful for us to know. I'll go ahead and start presenting or introducing our presenters today. Our first presenter is Ms. Christina Armstrong. Christina works for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory with a focus on energy and techno-economic analyses of various technology applications. She is the lead engineering support for the DOE's effort to transition our legacy software tools that were all done in the 1990s and early 2000s to a modern open source format called MEASUR. And she's also a technical account manager for a Better Plants program, assisting partners in achieving their energy use reduction goals and connecting them with the DOE resources to reach greater energy savings. I'll just note that MEASUR is our acronym at DOE. It stands for Manufacturing Assessment Software for Utility Reduction. So, Christina?
Hi, good morning. I guess let's just get started. First off, next slide, please. So, as Bruce said, MEASUR stands for the Manufacturing Energy Assessment Software for Utility Reduction, but it's MEASUR. It helps people in the industrial or commercial spaces model manufacturing energy use and generation. We have 7 different assessment types: pumps, compressed air, fans, process heating, steam, wastewater, and what's called the treasure hunt. We have currently 1 inventory type for motors, just lets you track what type of motors you have in your system, how many, where. And we have over 70 calculators, as 30 some odd of you know, including for all the systems I named before, plus more for motors, lighting, CHP, heat recovery, and so forth. Next slide, please. You can download MEASUR by going to the link shown above, energy.gov/EERE/AMO/MEASUR. You can also use whatever search engine you are most comfortable with and just type DOE MEASUR, and that should get you there. You can also visit measure.ornl.gov, and that will get you an online version. We are still improving MEASUR. Updates occur about once a month. You will get an automatic notification for updates if you are connected to the internet. You don't need to uninstall. You just click the little button right there and say download now. It'll go through the setup again, and you're all set. If you have IT issues such that it's kind of difficult for you to download things, you can look at the release notes to see if it's worthwhile for you to download right now. Or again, you can just use the online version. Next slide, please. All right, well, now we're just at the demo. So I am going to take over the screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. And I'm just going to get started. This is the home page of MEASUR. From here, you can go to calculators, you can view the assessments you've already made, or you can start new assessments, inventories, or play with the Data Explorer. Also over here, you can see another place to add new assessments or inventories. You can see the assessments you've already made in the dashboard. And you can get to all the calculators and the settings and other useful bits of MEASUR. To start an assessment, you just click on whichever one you're interested in. If you click on these icons down here. It'll automatically fill out the assessment type for you. Name it something kind of interesting so you know what you're looking at. And if you've already made some folders, you can go on and set the folder you'd like to put it in. I'm actually going to hop into our example first. Now, obviously, each system is different, they're all unique, but they all more or less start off with this page that lets you set mostly your units if you want to be in imperial, metric, or some custom setup based on whatever you normally use in your facility. Next, most of them will have an operations tab where you set things like how many hours per year that equipment operates, things like utility costs, and then some carbon emissions information. Next, you jump straight into performing your assessment. It's going to run you through data points that are needed to understand your system and calculate its efficiency or how much energy it's using. This is where everything is all different and unique for each assessment. And some key things that I want to point out. There's some fields that you might not know what I mean. Like, for example, pump type. That's very broad. It has a list of things right here, but that doesn't necessarily help. Each field has help text relating to what MEASUR is asking you for to help you try to figure things out. So from here, you can look at these pictures and kind of say, okay, well, my pump kind of looks like this, and it's used for large suction applications. So I pick that. In this case, you also have to put in information about the motor that's attached to the pump, and then some field data. It could be that you don't know your motor's full load amps anymore. The nameplate got damaged or whatnot. We have helpful little links right here, little buttons that will help you calculate certain fields, either with data already on the page, or in this case, bringing up a new small calculator within the tool to help you understand and figure out how to calculate that value. Usually, when there's enough data to actually calculate something, you will see a results tab over here instead of the help. And that will start letting you know what your baseline values are. So in this case, pump efficiency, going through the rated powers, motor efficiency, power factor, annual CO2 emissions, annual energy, and annual cost and savings for each of those, which isn't applicable yet. So the next step, after you've established your baseline, the next step is doing the assessment. There's two different ways to do the assessment. One is called the expert view, which takes you back through the same fields you just went through, and you just change the fields as applicable. The other view is a little bit more interesting. It's what we call the Explore Opportunities or Novice view. Here you start with a list of common energy opportunities for that system, and it provides you the data points needed to achieve that opportunity measure. So in this case, it's a new pump and motor. That's what I named it. We can either say, I know what my pump efficiency is, or you can use the internal calculations based on the HI Institute to try to estimate for your head and flow what is the best efficiency you can expect. And then you can also change your motor to a more efficient motor. You can do multiple changes in one assessment. And you can see right here that doing those two things will save you about 9% of your energy per year. You can also have multiple scenarios, and they will just store in here. If you want to include information such as implementation costs, you will need to switch over to expert view, and it's a value right in here. And you can also add notes for your modification, letting you know what you do. So when you look at your report later, you know what you were thinking. Speaking of the report, The assessments all have a page where it gives you the summary information that you saw earlier for each assessment, so you can view them all side by side and see which assessments might, or which opportunities might be the best to move forward with, and you can look at the notes. We provide graphs. We love graphs. So in this instance, you can see where the different losses are in the 2 different scenarios we have selected, and compare each scenario's losses. You have Sankey diagrams. These are nice. They just visually show you again where your losses are in the system. And finally, all of them have an input summary. So when you print this off, you can see this is what all I entered. Each assessment also has the useful calculators for that system just right in here, so you can get to it easily. So if you want to use a pump curve to build your assessment out, you can build your pump curve in here and just have it right there handy. Next, I want to take you to the dashboard. This is where all your assessments are stored after you've completed them. So you can see here are examples, just one of each. You can see a summary of all of them right here. So if you have more than one of each type, it'll sum it all up, and you can see the annual energy used and the annual cost for each of those. You can also do set some global settings for the folder. So if you are using the folder to represent a different facility, you can just go in and put in the fuel, steam, and electricity costs. And if you create a folder in this create an assessment in this folder, you don't have to edit those fields individually anymore. I'm going to hop over to my example folder real quick. You can see there's multiple pumps, process heating, and steam systems in here, and fan systems in here. From there, you can click one of these and copy or move it to a different assessment. You can also do that here, where you can rename, move, delete. You can use this to select all the folder content and generate a report. This report will summarize all the different assessments you have in here, giving you nice graphs of everything you've performed assessments on, breakdown of energy source. And then it just shows you each of those graphs or each of those reports from that you already created. And for the roll-up, lets you choose which of the opportunities you want to use. It will automatically choose the biggest one. But if that's not something you think you will be able to do, you can just click on a different one and see the details change. You can also look at roll-ups for each system. And you can compare just within each system type your different assessments you have done. Finally, also very important, there's the ability to import and export your assessments. You would just click on these. It asks you to name your file. It'll pop up your normal window for saving things on your system. Just hit save. And now you have a file that you can email to colleagues or your TAM to help understand better what's going on if you have questions, or if you actually find a bug or something, you can email that file to me and I can help you understand what's going on. As many of you mentioned or said in the polls, you've used the calculators. We have about 78 different calculators that are smaller, little useful calculations to do just kind of on the fly. You don't need to do a full assessment. Maybe you just want to, you don't remember what your barometric pressure is up in Colorado. Or you want to do a bleed test for your pressure system, your compressed air system. Each calculator has a little generate example button that will give you some just values so you can see what's going on, see what it looks like. You can reset the data, it takes you back. And so again, we have compressed air, fans, one lighting calculator, several motors, process cooling. Even though we don't have process cooling assessment just yet. We do have several calculators for chillers and cooling towers. Process heating has quite a few calculators, several waste heat based calculators. Pumps, steam. I love this one. You never have to go to a steam table again. It's great. Has the TS diagram or the pH diagram. Back down. So calculators for each little tidbit of a steam system, insulation, blow down rate, and some wastewater calculators. The data exploration is a nifty tool for getting started with the compressed air assessments. It takes sensor data and allows you to do a day type analysis, which summarizes all the sensor data into different day types, so you can model a year of data with relatively very few data points. And you can also use the data visualization tool to just look at your data in more detail, figure out, see if you can find outliers, what's going on in these different points. And as I mentioned, there is the motor inventory, where you can set up different departments to put your motors in. You can decide which motor properties you want to track. And then you just have a tracking system. It will also very helpful, very easily give you a summary overview of how many motors and how much energy and cost they have in the different departments. And you can do a very quick, simple replace rewind calculation to help figure out if you should replace a motor, if you should rewind it when it fails, or if you should replace it when it fails. Finally, the last things I want to try to do in this very, very quick overview, the settings page. This lets you set globally any new assessment you make will have these settings. So you can set to imperial or metric. You can say you want your energy results to be in kilowatt hours, even if you're doing a process heating assessment. You can say, I want to see the results when there's an option, or the help. You can set global fuel costs. You can set a global zip code for your electricity for CO2 calculations. You can globally set your units. You can set if you want to see the tutorials as they pop up when you start. And finally, what I call the big red button. This is where you clear your data. You can reset all your data, the application settings, so the page we're just looking at. You can just reset the examples, something to do occasionally when updates come through, so you make sure you get the latest examples. You can delete the assessments you have made, and you can delete the custom materials, which I didn't show you, but it's when you do a process heating assessment, you can actually create charge materials and whatnot, so you don't have to input thermodynamic data every time you use it for something you will be doing a lot of assessments on. And that is all I wanted to show in a very, very quick overview of MEASUR. If you have any questions at all, please email me at armstrongko@ornl. If you find any problems with the tool, please email me. You can also, if you don't remember my email, you can always go to feedback and use this email address. It will eventually get to me. And I think that's it. Bruce, if you want to take things back.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Christina. It's definitely keeping us on time there. I think I'll just add that, this effort to upgrade the tools has been going on for about 4 or 5 years now. And it's really been a Herculean effort to, take different tools that were created at different times by different developers and different programming languages and get them all in one platform. The key takeaways that I would suggest y'all get from this is that they're a lot more user-friendly than the old tools were. They're also conformant with the DOE cybersecurity protocols, and they're also aligned with the newer operating systems. So you won't have any trouble using them in newer computer operating systems. So there's a lot of good things about them. The calculators, which we saw during the polls, are wildly popular. And the nice thing about it is that the tools originally, the system assessment tools, were designed to do an investment grade energy assessment on that type of system. So for example, the steam system assessment tool or the steam system modeler tool for industrial steam systems. But the problem with that is that you need to collect all the data that you need and put them in those tools in order to get those kinds of results. The nice thing about the calculators is that if you only have a couple of data points, you can still get some calculations and still get some value from these tools. So we definitely invite you all to look into them and see what works for you. And also, if you get one of our in-plant trainings in Better Plants, we will be teaching the relevant tool for that training at that event. So, did you want to add anything else, Christina? Or
You covered a lot of really important points. Thank you. I guess in regards to the cybersecurity aspect, all the data is actually stored on your own computer. There's no server, there's no login. It is 100% free. You can just download it and use it, or use it online whenever you want. It's open source, meaning if you have your own software that you're wanting to build and want to integrate some of this into it, you can do so if you adhere to the acknowledgements laid out in the open source license. And yeah, that's a lot of the key points. We've worked really hard on this, taking some tools that have been trusted for some of them over 20 years now, and hopefully you guys will use it and enjoy it, and you can see next the how other companies have already used it and found it helpful. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, Christina. That was very helpful. One quick thing before I introduce our next speaker, I did want to just remind folks that if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in Slido. If you go to slido.com, type in DOE at the hashtag prompt, and then you'll be able to enter questions. If you use the chat box here, those are really for questions related to audio-visual issues. And our tech support just put the link in the chat for y'all. I think it'd be better because you'll have a better chance of having those questions answered as people like them in the Slido platform. So please go to the Slido platform if you have technical questions related to the tools. Well, I'll go ahead and get started with our next presenter. We have with us today David Rawls from Eastman Chemical Company. David has worked at Eastman Chemical since 2006 as a mechanical engineer. During his tenure, he searches for ways to save energy at the company and specializes in steam systems, which is good because Eastman generates a lot of steam. David graduated in 1981 from the University of Tennessee with a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, and he later received a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Tennessee in 1995. David, feel free to get started.
All right. Well, thank you for that great introduction. Yeah, I do work here at Eastman Chemical Company. We're a specialty chemical company, the largest facility we have is here at Kingsport where I work, which is a 900 acre site that has a combined heat and power system that's equivalent in size to a 700 megawatt power station. So there's a lot of opportunity here to use MEASUR. Next slide, please. Our first encounter with MEASUR was back in 2019. We had some on-site training to use MEASUR to perform pump analyses. And so we looked at 6 different pumping systems in the plant, which comprise multiple pumps. Out of using the MEASUR tool, we were able to identify some savings on those all the pumping systems. 2 of the projects that we identified with MEASUR were implemented, and the rest are still under evaluation. Of the 2 projects, one was to trim an impeller, and the other was to replace an old worn-out pump, and it resulted in a savings of 1 million kilowatt hours per year energy savings. Next slide, please. In addition, we have numerous turbines here. We have 19 turbine generators in the plant, and plus probably dozens of other turbines that are used for other purposes. And so the measure calculator for turbines comes in handy. And what I have here is a representative of the input and output conditions we have using the measure tool for turbines. So we have a 6,000 kilowatt turbo generator that takes in 600 psig steam that's at 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Isentropic efficiency is 75%. Energy out is 21.6 MMBTUs per hour. Generator efficiency is 95, and then the power out 6,000. And then below you can see what measure comes out with as far as the enthalpy, the mass flow, 163,000 pounds an hour, specific enthalpy, specific entropy, and then the energy flow of 225 MMBTUs per hour. And that's how handy that turbine calculator is it can give you all these outlet conditions based on the inputs you have. So next slide, please. Insulation is very important here at the plant. We have over 15 miles of main steam headers in the plant, plus, probably tens and hundreds of miles of much smaller headers. And so with insulation, you can not only tell the effect of adding insulation to piping, which you can also do with 3E plus, but also you can use the insulation calculator and measure to evaluate adding insulation to tanks. And see 3E plus, which is a widely used insulation calculator that's online, doesn't have a slot for tanks in there. So measure is valuable to us because of that. And as an example, I have here is this is a typical tank, 20 feet in diameter and 20 feet high. I evaluated adding 4 inches of insulation to it. Internal temperature is held with tracing at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Our average temperature here in Kingsport is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we use natural gas as our primary energy source. But using that measure tool, then that tells me that the heat loss is 387 MMBTUs per year. If we modify it, that drops to 210 MMBTUs per year. Energy cost goes from $3,875 down to $2,108. That gives us an annual cost savings of $1,767. Next slide, please. MEASUR has a very handy calculator for motors. It helps us to figure out what the motor power curve is based on just inputting the type of motor we have in the nameplate. So we can determine what the power is for various speeds and everything. That helps us to determine if a variable speed drive would save us a lot of money if we put it on a motor. User inputs consist of frequency, power, RPM, and efficiency, which is all nameplate. And then if full load current is unknown, MEASUR will even estimate the full load current for you. Next slide, please. And here's something that I wish we had a long time ago, is MEASUR has a calculator for climate data. If you're going to study like an HVAC system, it's really good if you know during the course of a year how many hours of the year your local climate spends at a given temperature, pressure, or humidity. One way you can do it is to go to National Weather Service or Weather Underground, but that's extremely laborious. You just have to tease through all the data by yourself and kind of make estimates like during a day. Okay, I think it was maybe an hour at this time or whatever. MEASUR makes this extremely quick. You go on to MEASUR, you input your zip code in or another identifier, and then it gives you ranges of temperature and specific temperature and humidity, and it'll tell you during a year how long you spend at each range. That is extremely handy, and it saves a lot of time for HVAC analyses. Next slide, please. So in summary, I like MEASUR. It's very easy to use. It has numerous engineering calculations all in one place, so I don't have to go hunting for things. Both initial download and updates are free, can be used for full energy assessments like we did for the pumps or for individual calculations. And there are tools for pumps, installation motors, and steam equipment, which I find handy. And thank you very much.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, David. It sounds like y'all got a lot of value from the tool so far, so hopefully that'll continue into the future. One quick note before I introduce our next speaker. I noticed that there are a lot of questions coming in, and if you could, please specify if you want them to be answered by either Christina or any of the other panelists. It looks as though the majority of the ones I saw may end up going to Christina, but if you want a specific panelist to address them, you can please add that their name, like their first name, and then we'll go from there. So now I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. This is Prasad Vinayagamurthy. Sorry if I mispronounced it, Prasad, but Prasad has worked at 3M for over 7 years, overseeing energy management and energy management information systems for the US Canadian operations of the company. He leads the implementation of ISO 50001, the energy management standard within the company. He also works with ISO 2001 SEP energy management systems and identifies energy savings opportunities through energy assessments, energy hunts, and energy walkthroughs. And he also performs techno-economic analyses for all energy-related projects. In 2019, Prasad was awarded the Association of Energy Engineers Canada Region Energy Engineer of the Year and the 2018 IESO Energy Manager Award in Ontario. Prior to 3M, Prasad had worked at Michelin and Exide Industries. So Prasad, feel free.
Thank you, Bruce, for the introduction. Next slide. Yeah, I am here. I'm just going to give you a quick overview about the energy management at 3M and how we use measure tools for support these activities. Next slide, please. Just starting with the overview of 3M. So 3M, our purpose is to unlock power of people, ideas, and science, and create and imagine. And our promise to the the people is to improve lives by helping solve the world's greatest challenge. Right. Next slide, please. Again, we over the century here. 3M, and we make products about more than 50,000 different products, right from sandpapers to window frames and medical tapes and all other things. Next slide, please. So again, 3M has some sustainability goals, focus areas. So the main three for sustainability focus area is science for circular, science for climate, and the science for community. So next slide, please. And my main focus is science for climate, right? So we have different sustainability goals starting and different pillars. So our focus is my focus is mine and my team is focused on climate and energy. Under climate and energy, we have different goals. So to improve energy efficiency by 30% index to net sales, increase renewable energy to 50% of total electricity use by 2025, reduce scope 1 and scope 2 emission by 50% by 2030, 80% by 2040, and carbon neutral by 2050. And the last goal is to help our customer reduce their GHG by 250 million tons of CO2 through our 3M products. So these are our goals, and we work on it. Next slide, please. Again, 3M is committed to different sustainability goals, RE100, renewable electricity. Then we work with Better Building, and we are part of Better Climate Challenge as well to support our goals and common goals. Next slide, please. Okay, how are we addressing this climate and energy goals at 3M? So main focus is on energy efficiency, because we believe energy efficiency will help our renewable goals and GHG goals. So energy efficiency is the main goal which we focus on. Under that, how we do is energy management system. So we work with the entire energy management system to make sure that we have an process, dedicated flow to work on energy at all sites, right? And the second thing is energy monitoring and reporting. So we know that if we are not measuring it, we cannot control it. So we focus on monitoring, sub-meterings, and reporting thing. And the last one is design and technology. We were trying to bring new technology into the systems, to the site, And also we want to bring more technology changes during our design phase itself, right? Next slide, please. Again, as I said, so data is the key. We want to measure it so we can control it, we can report it. So we have different systems in 3M to get the data into the system and monitor and measure it. So we have different database to do that. Next slide, please. And again, about energy management system, just a graph to show you how the energy management system works. So if you see the first half of the graph, you audit, you work on some projects, you reduce your energy, and then it's under control, and then lose focus on it. Then the energy increases. Then you do again projects to bring it down the cost. But standardized energy approach is what we are focusing with through ISO 50001 and SAP. So where we are, getting senior management commitment, and then we are starting doing low-hanging fruit savings. Then we are going with advanced energy measures, and then it becomes as a company cultures to focus on energy. Next slide, please. This is just to show you how our ISO 50001 works, effectiveness. So we just calculate the difference between the savings between the non-ISO sites and the ISO site between our sites. And we are seeing 2.2 times higher energy savings and the cost savings by ISO site implementations. Next slide, please. Currently, we are certified to 56 sites globally for ISO 50001 and about 40 sites in this continent, US and Canada and Mexico. Next slide. So how again, so ISO, so how this measure tab is supporting us, right? So this is the one graph we just normally do every energy review we do for supporting ISO 50001 every annually. And I use this tool for some of the sites to calculate where are the area where focus, where can we find an opportunities. And I cannot give the cost here, but just to show, okay, by doing what are the activities we can reduce energy, and we can take this as to the next step of doing identifying as a project and working on on this project. Next slide. This is another one type of analysis we do on the system, on the equipment to say that, okay, where we need to focus, what are the projects we can do using this tool. Next slide, please. Different calculator that we use for our easy calculations, like air compressor reductions, and to identify a smaller projects, easy projects. So we do the individual calculations here. Next slide, please. Again, as I said, we want to bring this in the design itself. So right in the beginning of the project, where we are going to expand the project, a renewable upgrade. So we made some changes internally with the 3M. And I am next slide, please. I'm going to show you how the measure is supporting on that. So this is one example where we did is that the site uses 285 psi steam pressure header for both process. And we have one process that's need 285 psi, but the rest of the process need only lower head pressure. So during our infrastructure renewal, we were doing the assessment on this to determine what is the energy savings on it. If we go to the next slide, please. So here you can see that we are right at night operating at 285 psi, and we was calculating energy savings from 140 psi by reducing the steam header, and then we decided to go with an individual boiler to support 285 psi, and then rest of the boilers to support 140 psi. So by separating this, we were able to save energy during our design phase and our infrastructure renewal time. Next slide, please. Another thing we do at 3M is energy tertiary hands. We do at other sites, again, with the help of DOE, we do that. So energy tertiary hands is one we do it, and we identify the projects, build up the hopper for our continuous improvement. The next slide, please. Again, here is the measure tool will help us with energy tertiary hand. This is just an example that we had. So we used to use this tool during our energy tertiary hands, identify the projects. We just put into that to calculate the energy savings, implementing cost to find what is the low cost we need to focus right now, and what will be the project that's include high capital cost that need to be focused. We separate that, and we have this table developed to present to the top management to get some more support on it. So these tools helped us in doing all this energy tertiary hands identification and calculating it in the easy way. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. I have just given a couple of examples where we use this measure tools, but that's a lot of calculator inbuilt with this measure where we are using it, and we'll be trying to use more on that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Prasad. That was very insightful. I'll go ahead and introduce our final speaker today. Today, we're happy to have Jonathan Sattel from Valvoline. Valvoline joined our program a couple of years ago, and they've been doing really well. Jonathan is a professional engineer who has a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering, and he's also a licensed professional engineer in the state of Kentucky. During his career, he has been heavily focused in manufacturing and supply chain operations. Currently, he works as a senior engineer with Valvoline Inc., headquartered in Lexington, Kentucky, where he provides global engineering support to his organization, construction and project management, process design and optimization, financial analysis, risk management, and general technical support for all the Valvoline sites. He works with almost every continent and within all levels of the organization. So with that, Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, Bruce. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Just about us real quick. Valvoline's a worldwide supplier of automotive products and services. So here in the US, we operate a little over 1,500 quick lube chain stores, but also on the side, we have a robust manufacturing and supply chain operation, basically around the globe, almost every continent except Antarctica. And we manufacture lubricants, antifreezes, performance fluids, transmission fluids, kind of the works there. We're headquartered in Lexington, Kentucky, but we have, again, a global supply chain, mostly here in the US and Canada, but also some international locations, China, Australia, a couple places in Europe, and JVs around the world. We have a very diverse operation. There's varying levels of blending, packaging, and logistics operations everywhere, almost 10,000 employees worldwide. And we're a partner in the Department of Energy Better Plants program, wherein we have a goal to reduce 25% of our energy intensity over the next 10 years. So we're working on that. And next slide, please. So we have a couple challenges within Valvoline and executing to both the ESG goals and also our financial performance goals. But one, we're a very diverse supply chain, so presence pretty much everywhere. But there are a few key locations. So distance between areas. So with that, you get a lot of geographically, operationally, and culturally different locations that you're dealing with. So we have a challenge in rolling out the standardization across all those sites, having goals that mirror up to the different methods for process execution. There's a mixture of thermal fluids, steam, air mixing, side mixing, top mixing, and then a lot of pump processes. And then finally, there's varying levels of automation throughout the processes in manual operations versus semi-automated versus fully automated. We're also looking to shift more towards green manufacturing, so that kind of falls in with the Better Plants pledge and minimizing our environmental impact. Some assets are in need of recapitalization, so basically replacing those in a sensible manner. Exercising business intelligence, looking at data from our ERP systems and the plant outputs, and then also just executing to our business goals and prioritizing what we want to look at basically throughout the operations. Next slide, please. So the measure tool, I was introduced to this early last year, 2021, and we found it useful because it's it's an off-the-shelf software that gets periodic updates. When you're sharing this with people, it carries some weight when you tell them that the Department of Energy basically developed it. So there's a little bit of trust that goes into when you share it with your downline customers within your company. I like it because it's a consolidated source of knowledge that general users can use. You can have facility managers, supervisors whip out this tool and use it, and they don't necessarily have to bring out their Perry's Chemical Engineering Handbook. Everything's all right there. You just punch in the numbers and you can do a quick analysis of your system. So Christina already talked about it, but there's calculators for steam pumps, compressed air, and lighting replacement, and others. Next slide, please. So we primarily use it for understanding kind of business objectives. So if you put in your system, basically you can go out and basically construct your operating conditions, and then from there you can perform scenario analysis. If you're running a project, you might do a sensitivity analysis to understand some of the financial benefits. I always find doing scenario analysis is also beneficial because you can get some realistic understanding for different conditions. And then you can take that and do returns on investment, understand cash flows, and evaluate different tenants and projects to execute on. The graphics there kind of show the scenario analysis benefits of MEASUR. Next page, please. So kind of the way I tell people to go about using this is, just establish your base assumptions. You can give this to basically anybody downline in your supply chain, and they can construct their case using base assumptions, build the system out, and then perform any kind of iteration, process modifications to your assumptions from there on. So kind of here, there's a pretty rudimentary process flow diagram for a steam system, and a couple of iterations of, if we change this, then what's the benefit? If we change that, then what's the benefit? And you can get things like cash flow improvements, savings on water, savings on CO2 emissions, kind of the works. Next slide, please. So in summary, it really helps with interdisciplinary communication. Not everyone is schooled in kind of the technical matters of steam compressed air systems. So if you're talking to somebody that's not necessarily educated or trained in those, it's an easy way to translate that information for them to better understand it. It gives your operations teams a toolkit for, they can do quarterly or annual health checks on their own systems, do predictive maintenance, and size their own equipment. And it also provides a standard for a reference for standardization. There's a tool for multilingual support, so it's got a Google Translate function in it, where you just click it, select your language, and then say another user can easily use it in their own understanding. So that's kind of it. We've used it for many opportunities, both steam, compressed air, LED replacements, pump assessments, and it's been great for us. And next slide, please. I think that's it.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks a lot, Jonathan. It's really interesting to me how all the partners have used the tools in different ways, but have gotten value from it. Especially interested by the scenario planning that you all did at Valvoline there. There were a couple questions that asked about LEDs and water savings. And I think Jonathan pretty much covered them. So you can use the the tools for those kinds of resources as well. I'll go ahead right now and just before we do the Q&A, just want to thank all of our panelists for the presentations and encourage you all to download the additional resources handout shared in the Zoom chat just right now. This handout contains a lot of links to resources from the Better Buildings program and our speakers on today's topic. And we hope that you all find this useful. Now I'll move on to the Q&A. If you haven't already done so, we ask that you go to Slido and enter the event code DOE. It looks as though we have plenty of questions, and I apologize ahead of time. We may not get to all of them, but I'll go ahead and start with some of the most popular ones. We have an anonymous poster who said, if you have several sites, is there an Excel that can be sent to different facility managers to collect data need to input and measure? My interpretation is that I think what you're asking is whether we can send a spreadsheet to different facilities, collect their data, and then put it into measure. I don't know, Christina, do you want to take that? Or?
So we do have an Excel data entry form for process heating. You can find it at the bptraining.ornl.gov process heating training session. But overall, my suggestion would be to send your different facility managers MEASUR, and they can export the assessments back to you. Even if everything isn't fully completed, they can still export things back to you so you can aggregate them and tidy them up as you need to.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question with has the greatest number of likes is, are any recorded trainings available? And my sense is that we do have recorded trainings called the virtual implant trainings, and we can provide that separately to y'all. But I don't know, Christina, if you have anything else to add on that? Or
we have an older webinar that we did, I want to say October 2020, maybe, where I went over MEASUR for about an hour, but I would suggest going to the virtual implant trainings, again, that bptraining.ornl.gov, and there you will actually get system-specific tutorials if you find the right one, and that will help. They all used MEASUR when they can.
Okay, great. The next question we have here is, how is it possible to join an on-site assessment to learn how to use the MEASUR tool? And my best answer for that is that we do have implant trainings and Better Plants. Some are virtual, some are in person, and we simply invite you to check with your technical account manager to find out who's getting what on-site assessment, and then we'll work to make it possible for y'all to attend it. So, there's a question from Maxim who asks if the assessment can handle optimization of banks of equipment, for example, 5 refrigeration chillers. And I think, Christina, you said we're working on a process cooling application?
We are working on a process cooling assessment. Right now, I know there's the different chiller calculators do have inputs for putting in multiple chillers, so I would check those out. Okay. But I know chillers do operate in multiples, so I imagine when we do get that assessment in, it will be able to handle multiple chillers at a time.
Great. And I'll give one over to David Rawls here. Could you chat a bit about the training you received on MEASUR? Was it one-on-one, and did you have to pay for it?
It was, we had an instructor come in and give the training to a group of us. And I don't recall there being any cost of that. I might be wrong, but because I didn't handle that end of it, but yeah, it was a group of us that received training.
Okay, so it was probably one of our implant trainings, and yeah, there is no fee associated with those. The DOE will cover those costs completely. So, a few other questions here. I think I'll take maybe one or two more. Somebody asked that is there a plan to make a detailed tutorial for MEASUR?
I am very slowly working on algorithm documents, but those are more related to the math. in the slide deck for this webinar, there is actually a slide deck version of a tutorial. I didn't only just have those 3 slides. It goes through everything I mentioned and more. So that might be a good place to start. And again, there's older webinars you can look for and the Better Plants training.
Okay, terrific. Another quick question that came in here is whether projects such as daylighting window films can use MEASUR to show ROI and heat loss and energy savings by installing film rather than window replacement. I don't know that we go into the facilities so much, but I don't know, Christina, if you want to address that real quick.
I'm going to go with not that I know of.
Okay.
We only have the one lighting calculator, and that's basically replacement. Okay, that's more of a building. No, not right now.
Okay.
If you have an Excel calculator that will help us put one in, we will accept suggestions for calculators. But right now, we do not have anything related to that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna have to cut it off now because we're right about time. We do hope that y'all will join us on our next webinar, Tuesday, December 6th, The Thrill of Bills, Leveraging Your Water Bills to Maximize Energy Efficiency, where you'll learn about how to understand your utility bills, particularly water ones, and how rates can maximize your cost savings through energy efficiency. I also mentioned that our next Better Buildings, Better Plants Summit will be April 11th through 13th next year here in Washington, D.C. This will be an excellent opportunity for attendees to network with their fellow industry peers and experts. We will be in person in the heart of D.C. Registration is coming soon, so please visit the Better Building Solutions Center to learn more. And with that, I'd like to thank our panelists very much for taking the time with us today. I'd also like to thank the folks who stayed on through the end and asked questions. We had some really good discussion. Feel free to contact our presenters directly with additional questions. I expect we have their contact information right there. And then I encourage y'all to also follow the Better Buildings Initiative on LinkedIn and Twitter for all the latest social media and news. You can find our handles by the respective icons on the left hand of the slide. You will receive an email notice when today's recording, slides, and transcript are available on the Better Building Solutions Center. So once again, thank you all for joining today. We hope you have a great week.